Welcome, everyone. I think we've met, but I don't like to assume that. I'm Madeline Trufant, the proud, happy sommelier for Plum Market, both in Michigan and Chicago. And tonight we have, for the most part, Michiganders on. So, you know, we have actually all of our guests from all of our 4 stores represented. And especially considering the Bloomfields in Ann Arbor, I think sometimes they could be in different states. There's such tremendous diversity in the culture. We're celebrating the West Coast tonight with 2 very special people. And this is a big pivot away from a couple of weeks ago. We had the Perrin family from the Southern Rhone. That was fun. We've been lucky enough to have one of the winemakers visit us in Michigan, Bibiana González. Ray, will you wave? Everyone may not know. And you can always select speaker view, by the way, when we get started. We'll be showing some pictures. Bibiana is married to Jeff Pizzoni, and they're sitting side by side, yay, in Sonoma, in their home or at their winery. And Bibiana led terrific tasting for us. Was it a couple of years ago, Bibiana, at the West Bloomfield store?
Yeah. It was a great tasting. I was just so impressed with the quality of seminars that you put together, and with your with the wine lovers that we got to share wine and conversation that night. So
that's nice to hear you say that. And Jeff, have you been to Michigan before?
You know, I have not, unfortunately.
That's okay. Something you can look forward to, because you know, you blame it on COVID. That's okay. But I will tell you that right before the shutdown, you know, our dining scene was getting tremendous ink, you know, and Detroit, Metro Detroit, which, you know, kind of includes Ann Arbor in our heart and minds, really hides in plain sight. It's a really dynamic community. It's very diverse. And I'm thrilled that we have 4 stores that all address their micro market, their neighborhoods. They're all unique, and the sets are unique. So that said, hello, Elaine. Nice to see you. Good to have you here. What we're doing.
Hi, Madeline.
Hello. I'm glad you're not missing tonight. Very good to have your company. Look how well-mannered everyone is. I don't hear anyone's doggies or kids, but if that happens, that's okay too. If your kids want to show up, Jeff and Bibiana, we won't shut them up. They can say hello. They have 2 beautiful little boys. So to give you the short version of what we're going to do before you can happily stop listening to my voice, we're going to taste 3 wines. We're going to taste a beautiful dry rosé called Lucy. We're going to taste Alma de Cattleya, which is a Sauvignon Blanc crafted by Bibiana, and we're going to taste Lucia Gary's Pinot Noir, which is made at the hands of Jeff. And it's very interesting because is one of the kids there? No, because these Jeff and Bibiana actually had to create a collaborative venture called Shared Notes to spend more time together. And we'll talk about that a little later. We're not tasting Shared Notes tonight, but I will tell you, it is absolutely staggeringly good New World Pinot Noir with no exaggeration. That's from my heart. Bibiana knows how much I love this wine. And so does Patrick Mulrooney. So the 2 of you are really hitting it. And some of the stores do carry Shared Notes, and if they don't have them, Patrick's nodding for the Bloomfield store, and I think just a little bit at West Bloomfield, but you can always order it. They're very, very special Sauvignon Blancs. If you like white Haut-Brion, you're in for a treat there. I'll set that up. So that said, we're going to taste these 3 wines in the order of the rosé, the Sauvignon Blanc, and the Pinot. But, you know, you can go for it at your own pace. That's how we're going to address them. We're going to show lots of pictures so that we hear about the wines, the growing regions, but more importantly, their stories. I mean, Bibiana actually gave us the option of having your brother and on Mark, right, Jeff? And he's the vineyard manager. Yeah. And as cool as that is, and as neat as he is, I just thought the 2 of you together, I wasn't going to pass that up. So next time he can join us, right? Short version of these two folks, because they're going to tell their own story. Bibiana was born in Colombia, and she may touch on it, you know, and grew up there in Medellin, right? Of notorious fame, right? And she actually studied chemical engineering and business admin, but she knew in her heart she wanted to make wine, and she didn't know why, which I'm sure baffled your parents. But she, you know, trudged over to France with little knowledge of the language. But, you know, you got accepted at school. They wouldn't say no to you. You got a couple of degrees over there, and you managed to work not only for big deal producers like Aubryon, but Burgundy and Côte Rôtie domains. And then came back to the States because of what? Our beautiful freedom here. We can't forget how important that is, you know, in terms of not just wine growing in many aspects. And she's had 24 harvests around the world, including South Africa. And we have to talk about that at some point, Bibiana, because I adore South Africa. And South Africa had a little bit of something about how you guys met, but I'll let you tell the story. So Cattleya and now Alma de Cattleya are her labels. They are her independent labels. She runs them herself. She is, you know, the entrepreneur with possibly 2 employees going to join you soon, right? Right. She does a lot of work. And by the way, these 2 lovely people have 2 little boys. I'm just going to throw that in there. And Jeff has a simpler but equally deep bio. You know, he grew up in a farming culture in the Santa Lucia Highlands. And do you correct people when they say Lucia, or you just let it go? You know, it's Spanish, not Italian.
Otherwise, I let it go.
I correct people. Jeff, I correct people. Jeff,
you correct people. Jeff lets it go.
He will let them say it. I'm like, Lucia.
Well, you know, look at it this way. At least if they say it, and maybe if they kind of know where it is, that's a good thing. So, you know, he grew up with farming and winemaking practices, but really, I think you're in the depth of your heart, your fascination with science took you in this direction. So you studied winemaking, and I am thrilled that you made wine at Peter Michael, which I suspect has something to do with your love of Sauvignon Blanc, but maybe you'll touch on that later. And now he is the hand behind Pizzoni estate wines, which is wonderful. And, you know, it's really not just a Grand Cru vineyard, but a Grand Cru name, Jeff. You must know that, you know, and it's, we're thrilled to welcome you. So that said, we're going to taste the Lucy Rosé first. Maybe if Jeff, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your family or whatever you want to start with, you can.
Right, sure. Well,
take it away.
Said, what I think is really neat, and what we certainly enjoy, is that Bibiana and I both knew that we were going to make wine all our lives, but from totally different backgrounds. Mine is, as you can see, is a little more illustrative, and it started with Dad. Is sometimes a wild character, and he would take and drop my brother and I in fermentation tanks when we were about 3 years old. So we have, from early days, we'd be stomping grapes, and it's really neat. But like you said, we grew up on a farm. We're in the middle of a vegetable field, because in the Santa Lucia Highlands is the mountain range where our family grows grapes, and on the valley floor of that area is all vegetables. So we grew up on the farm. And it is a great experience for my brother and I to see our family working together. My grandmother is 94 years old.
Holy moly. I have to tell you, I'm sorry, you know, you're talking to us and I'm showing a picture of you, but this is such a killer glamour shot that, you know, I couldn't not show it. Your grandmother is 94 years old?
94. And she did the payroll for the farm up until she was about 89. It's amazing.
Holy moly. I mean, correctly, you know, all herself. Good for her. God love her.
She had to do it that long because we couldn't find a replacement for her. She was that good. No, she's amazing. Our grandfather, you know, lived until he was 92. And up until the day he passed away, he was basically, at that time, my brother was waking up at, you know, 4 or 5 in the morning, would pick up my grandfather, drive around the farm every single day. So they kept checking the fields every day. And so that was where we grew up, you know, and they're very in touch with the farm, and you know, land and, closeness to that, working together. And as it was my father that was into winemaking and
This handsome gentleman in the middle here, right?
Exactly. Sometimes he's more like a third brother to us because he's such an easygoing, fun guy. And so he's always followed his passion. And in 1982, when he was planting grapes, there was not a lot of grape growing going on in the area. And this is Santa Lucia Highlands of Monterey County. A lot of farming, not a lot of grape growing, even less high quality grape growing. But he was always a passionate wine collector, and any grapes he farmed, he was devoted to finding out the best way to farm them for the quality. He'd drop fruit, do canopy management very early on.
So your parents were, had extensive acreage as farmers. And if I remember correctly, your dad's, your grandfather's name is Eddie, is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was this inspired, AKA crazy gentleman who decided to plant grapes. And who's the guy on the left?
So that's my brother, Mark.
There he is with your father. He's got the longest, wildest hair of the three of you.
He loves to say that Jeff is his brother and Mark was the father. So Gary used to trick people saying he was Jeff's brother because he's so lively and so young.
And I bet people bought it. And this, I stuck this picture in here. I'm interrupting you a little, but I just think this is a killer picture of your dad's spirit.
It really is. That's him.
So you were starting to tell us, was it 1982 that he decided to do the wine thing?
Yep, 82. And we're in the mountains there, our Pisoni estate vineyard, very mountainous, about 40 acres, a lot of different blocks. And he wanted to plant grapes there. And everyone thought he was crazy, told him not to do it, because in the Salinas Valley, everyone said, oh, that's the mountain ground. You can't grow anything up there. But he took his appreciation from the wines of France and Germany that he was drinking in and recognizing, hey, it's often up in the hills that the best wines are. So he said, forget that. I'm going up to the mountain and I'm going to plant grapes here. There was no water and we're a dry region. We're cold and dry. So it's a tough place to plant grapes, but he had to drill wells to find water. And at first he would drive a water truck up to be able to irrigate his vines.
Holy moly.
So he showed like this, insane dedication to achieving these vines in the mountains. Eventually found a well after like drilling 6 dry wells and almost being disowned, I think, by my grandfather.
We're talking serious granite here, right?
Yeah. So the well, as winemakers, we're really into geology and, the geeky aspects of what makes wine its character. So they're very granite soils. And the final well was 400 feet deep. But when the well driller went up, it was a high elevation location, and he drilled through 7 feet of topsoil, and then he hit solid granite, and it was solid granite all the way through the rest of the 400 feet. Rock. And you would just, as that drill bit was gnawing down through the granite, you would just have these waves of just like granite shards that just like come up out of the hole. It was wild.
Actually, let me bring a sample of the granite that we have.
Please
here.
show us. And I have pictures of I have the map a little bit later on, but this is a killer story because I was going to ask you, when you say no water, you're not kidding. Whoa.
400 feet of that. It's wild. And it's gneiss, which is metamorphosed granite. So you have these bands of, different densities of granite and quartz. But
I have to tell you, if anyone is into geology, I dutifully went to your website and read the little friendly essay about the geology there. I understood nothing. So, but I have a master sommelier friend, Wayne Belding, who's a geologist. So I bet he would get it all. The punchline is the complexity of the soil there goes back, much more than millennium, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So where we're at, it's very, granite-based soils. And on coastal California, you have a lot of, sedimentary or marine deposits. But we have this band of granite there, which broke off of Southern California and was transported by the San Andreas Fault movement up to where it is now. So we have this section which brings us these granite, very well-drained soils, low organic material, meaning stress on the vine. And it's also cold and foggy and windy, more stress on the vine. So these vines basically are working really hard, which is how we get high acid and a lot of concentration.
And killer color. I mean, looking at the Pinot, right, and I'm sure you're not beating it up. I mean, but we're talking about brisk, cold winds, even in the summertime. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Wow.
You're so good,
yeah.
Madeline. I don't know how you do it. You know every single detail of.
No, you know what it is? You are very sweet to say that. And by the way, my best wine friend, Michelle, is on. Will you wave, Michelle? We get our wines, your wines, as you know, through AHD Vintners, Chip and thanks to Chip and Michelle. But she knows that I always, I study too much in advance, and I'll tell you why. I really want to know the essence of you and this place, you know, and I wanna understand it. And frankly, a lot of people aren't good writers. So, you know, I'm not saying your website wasn't good. I'm just saying it was over my head. But you know, to get a sense of how complex geology can be in the United States, in California, is thrilling to me, because this is modern terroir. You've got the Lucy in front of you. Do you mind if I just go to the wine for a minute and you can tell us about it, Jeff? That would be great. This is Provençal style. Is that what you intended to make? Because it comes off that way.
Yes.
Though it's 100% Pinot Noir. Just tell us a little bit about it. And you make this. You started making this a while ago, correct?
Yeah, we started making this in 2003. We're, you know, primarily Pinot Noir as a producer, and you know, in 03 we had a little bit that we harvested for rosé. We loved it. We just intended to have a pallet of wine to drink at the vineyard, and a pallet is just about enough for all of us at the vineyard in the summer.
What is that? 55 cases. So that's a reasonable amount of wine, right?
So we did that for a couple of years, and then after enough people had tasted it, they were asking for it, so we started labeling it, and we called it Lucy, as you know, a little kind of sibling to our Lucia wines. And what we do is it's all Pinot Noir. We press it very lightly, so we extract very little of the color and tannins, keep it extremely fresh. With Lucy from the beginning, we've donated $1 of each bottle to breast cancer research.
This goes up front, and it's on the back label, everyone. If you look at your Lucy bottle, I think that's thrilling. What inspired you to do that? You know,
We have, some family members that have had breast cancer, but it was more just like, also just because wine has such a sense of community to it. And we have our brands, which are, focused on all on high quality wine production, but just as a way to bring something back, do something as a sense of community. And with this, it's been amazing how much of a community we've formed and found, and worked with Chip as well on sharing Lucy to a lot of different people. And how, the outreach and relationships we formed through this wine are really special.
Well, you were very kind to, you and Chip collaborated on donating magnums of Lucy to Uncork for a Cure when we were doing it in person. And my cousin Flora, who spearheads that, is deeply grateful. I will tell everyone, I like to overstate the obvious. Here's the Monterey region, right, which is south of San Francisco Bay. You know what? We assume that people know geography, but not everybody stares at maps the way we do, right? So we're talking the Central Coast, and you have a fabulous map we're going to show in a little while, but if you draw a straight line this way, it's the Gabilan Mountain Range, right? And then the Santa Lucia Highlands are located like there. Do I have that right? Right. But I'm very happy we're tasting this wine, and I'm also very happy that Vinous, which is one of the 2.5 publications I will hat tip, think highly of you. Oops, hold on a minute. I'm going to, you keep talking. I've got to plug in my computer because it's about to run out of juice. Is there anything else you'd like us to know about the Lucy, or maybe you can describe it for everyone, the style?
So yeah, like you said, Provençal in style, completely dry, high acid. Look for freshness, vibrancy in the wine. It's all estate fruit, which is really rare. We take parts of the vineyard that, you know, we find are more suited for rosé, or younger vines that we want to dedicate to rosé, saving the older vines for our Pizzoni estate in Lucia. We ferment it in neutral barrels, and that is, you know, it goes in oak, but nothing new, no new oak. So we're not looking for any flavor of the wood, but it gives a little bit of texture, which kind of complements and rounds out the higher acidity, even like a more like a extremely fresh but rounded, dry.
But you know, I find it very long and very sophisticated, and we're just sliding into the season when it's going to be perfectly appropriate. Do you guys have, when you reach for a bottle of this, what are you cooking?
We reach for a bottle of this no matter what we're cooking.
Excellent. Cheers to that. Chin chin. And here's to your health, by the way, and hopefully your family, as well as everyone's families, are making it through the tail end of what we hope will be, you know, well, we're moving in, let's put it in a positive way. We're moving into a time where we can see each other in person, we can hug each other, right? We can break bread and drink wine together. But thank you for what you do through Lucy, and thank you for making it. It's just beautifully delicious rosé. Yes.
Two things. I want to have Jeff mention the challenge of the 2020 vintage, which this, of course, is. But since I'm going to have to depart, I wanted to share one thing, which was a quote from our dearly departed Stephen Spurrier, who said there's three important things in life: one to love, good work to do, and something to look forward to. And I look forward to us all being able to do this in person in the not too distant future.
That's beautifully said, Chip. And here's to the memory of Stephen Spurrier. What a gentleman,
Absolutely.
You know, and a truly historic figure, especially for California wine, right? You know, the Judgment of Paris is something a lot of people know about, and I still haven't seen the movie. Oh, well. You know, the taste.
Movie's less good.
The movie's less good. The reality is exciting. Thank you for being on for a little while.
The 2020 vintage had its challenges, and so the Lucy is particularly important this year.
Though, you know, Jeff, if you can speak to that, but full disclosure, we have the 19, which is showing like an angel because the 20 hadn't come in yet in time. So, Jeff, you want to quickly tell us about both vintages?
Sure. So we had, you know, California had a really intense, you know, wildfire year in 2020, and Monterey County was really impacted by that. So as we were, you know, gearing up for harvest, we're starting to sample grapes, we're bottling, getting ready for harvest. The fire, you know, starts up in Monterey County, and it's on this mountain range that Madeline pointed out of the Santa Lucias, and it's a really windy area. So this fire starts, you know, rushing down this mountain range and goes fast. The things wineries, I mean, from a winery point of view, what we worry about in fire season is, one, if the fire is going to, you know, come up and encroach on your vineyard, possibly burn the vineyard, or two, if the smoke released from the fire would be absorbed by the vines and impact the wine quality that way. So first, we were worried about how fast the fire would go and if it would get to the vineyard. So my brother started cutting fire lines around the vineyard with the vineyard team and bulldozers. Eventually met up with CAL FIRE this is over the course of a couple of days, and helped them go up to the hills to cut fire lines, showed them a lot of different paths where they weren't able to get to before. But ultimately, there was still a lot of smoke. So we were worried about what the subsequent harvest would be like. And we picked a lot of grapes really early and dedicated that to rosé.
Like what time are we talking? Where are we? Are we in August?
Yeah, this is like late August.
Late August, right?
And so it was earlier than we would normally pick, but we said, you know, we're not going to know what the reds are going to be like. We ended up not harvesting a lot of fruit for Pinot Noir, and we're not going to make any Pinot Noir from Monterey County. But we decided early on, we're going to get after it, bring a lot of grapes in. We made a lot more rosé than normal, and which turned out great. And we're very happy with that. After going through something like that, we're like, okay, hey, at first we were worried about the vineyard burning down, but very quickly we're like, okay, that's fine. At least, we may have lost a vintage on our reds, but that pales in comparison to, losing a vineyard.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to look forward on our reorders to tasting the 2020, which
Yeah.
will have the punch of fresh fruit. But I got to tell you, the 19 is a testimony to how wines like this can handle bottle age. There's nothing lesser, the aroma. It's actually, it's moved into a sophisticated stage. The length is spectacular on it. So, you can have it with Mexican food if you like, but, I frankly would, do it with something a little bit less combative. I'm going to drag Bibiana into this conversation. And, the question is, and channeling your energy, you can talk about anything you want to, but I think the first thing, if you wouldn't mind, because I brought it up already, is where the two of you met, because that was a part of the trajectory of your professional life, right?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, and hello to everybody. I'm Bibiana. I'm the founder and the winemaker for Alma Wines. I am Jeff's wife, but I'm also a mom. I have two beautiful boys, one that is becoming 6 tomorrow, and an almost 4 years old that his birthday is in 5 days from tomorrow.
Lucas and Diego, I remember, yes.
Lucas from Diego. So Jeff and I, we met in California in 2005 when I was the harvest assistant for a very small winery that makes wines from the Sonoma coast. And Jeff was making the Pisoni wines at that winery. So we started to talk just a little bit about wine. I was in charge of the other winery wines, and we would cross paths and we would say hi, and we kind of become friends. And then I was doing double vintage during the 2005, 2006, and 2007 vintage with South Africa. And coincidentally, you were asking about South Africa. Jeff was going to South Africa to visit friends.
Yeah, got a friend that I've worked harvest with a couple of times.
So did you guys end up in South Africa together?
Not dating, but we saw each other.
Yeah, they're there.
Almost every year I was there. So we saw each other twice out of the 3 years I was in South Africa.
Well, that place is so stunningly beautiful. I can't imagine it didn't have something to do with your ending up together, right?
It is a magical place. I think that for anybody that can go wine country, tasting wine overseas, I would highly recommend South Africa just because it's so beautiful. And the wines are really great. It's just the cost of bringing the wines that make them so much more expensive. But yeah, I was born and raised in Medellin, Colombia. And as Madeleine said, Medellin was very known for other reasons, not wine. And I definitely grew up on the worst years of Colombia. So the 80s and the 90s were definitely marked by all the drug cartels, Pablo Escobar history, kidnappings, FARC, guerrillas, like you name it, right? And since I was 14 years old, I always say that I just wanted to make wine. I was fascinated by wine.
Since you were 14, were your parents drinking wine at home? Because you had educated parents.
So I have educated parents, but we were really middle class, not so much access to wine. Like wine in Colombia at the time was probably only consumed by 1% of the population. So we didn't have a wine culture or a wine consumption. Colombia has been traditionally drink heavy alcohol like aguardiente and beer. So not really a very educated palate. We would not drink wine at the time.
So where did this thing move in your 14-year-old heart? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. I mean, I always tell people, I don't know where it came from, but back in 2008, Jeff gave me a DNA test, like when you swap your cheeks and you send it to see where you come from. And we were so convinced that I would be like, American Indians and Spanish influence because we were colonized by Spain. but I was 100% from France.
No kidding. Huh.
Supposedly. So I tell people, maybe in another life, I made wine, or my DNA comes from a family that was involved with wine for generations. I don't know.
It was really wild. There were like 10 of us that did this DNA swab, and well, first of all, everyone had like 6 or 10 different geographic areas represented, and there was usually multiple continents. And Bibiana was the only one that only
had one.
one place represented. It was like, this is really hard to believe.
It's really hard to believe.
I think that just gave me chills, and it's a reason if anyone started sipping on the Sauvignon Blanc, I don't know if you're going to like this association tonight, but I love the style because I really love California Sauvignon Blanc, but this is different, Bibiana. It's more lifted and sleek and delicate. It makes me think of a little bit of the Upper Loire. I wouldn't know what to compare it to, but I don't think you mind that association if I say that.
I don't mind it at all. And, I feel like a lot of people ask me a lot about my philosophy and what really motivates my winemaking process, and why I'm making wines like the Alma wines that are such an affordable price point for a winemaker that has always been making very expensive wines. So my entire career has been working for pretty much the luxurious high-end price point on wines. So making Alma wines was really important to me because I really wanted consumers to taste a varietal on its purest expression.
So you Cattleya was your first effort, correct? And that is more premium price point. And then you moved into Alma de Cattleya. Oh, do tell us about the name. I don't want to say it. You can say it. Where it comes from.
Yeah,
Cattleya.
So Cattleya is an orchid. Is the national flower of Colombia, so it's pronounced Cattleya, like Princess Leia, actually. Alma means soul. So I really wanted people to understand that I am extremely connected to these wines. I'm on the sorting table when the fruit comes to the winery. I'm at the press. I'm deciding when we do a press cut. I'm tasting the wines constantly during the winemaking process, and I'm really there when we are bottling the wine. So I really wanted people to understand that this is not a massive production wine, still very small productions. All the wines are still like 300 cases, 500 cases, 2,000 cases, which is pretty small when you look at other brands that are available at that price point. So I really tell people that these are wines with soul, and that was kind of the idea behind the name.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you originally made this for the Colombian market, but that didn't work out. So now we get all of Alma de Cattleya for the US. I have to tell you, I actually had an argument with our team because I had tasted both of these whites, and I had tasted the red, which I think, Patrick, you bought that for Bloomfield, didn't you? And I love it. If you want to pick some of that up, that is Cab Merlot, Syrah, Cab Franc. But your Chardonnay, by the way, is stunning at that price point. I kid you not. So I think people should trudge in and request it, and we can buy it for you. But you know how I feel about the Sauvignon Blanc. I think it's just beautiful. But correct me if I'm wrong. You use a little neutral oak on this. That surprises me.
Yeah, so all the wines are aged and fermented on neutral French oak vessels. Mm-hmm. So you were talking a little bit about shared notes, which is the only wine that Jeff and we collaborate truly every day on the winemaking process. And the barrels that we use for shared notes are 100% new oak, which is very surprising for people to make that choice, winemakers. So all of those barrels that get used only 8 months or 9 months get then used on the Alma Sauvignon Blanc. And
so I'm sorry, shared notes is 100% new oak, correct? Which is, it hides, I can't tell. And then all those barrels come to this wine.
Yeah, yes. So what it really does, the reason why we age these wines in oak is because it really gives this texture to the wine, being extremely dry. So we have wines that are very dry, and so that means they don't have any residual sugar. but they are wines that have a lot of volume and very long on the mouthfeel due to the fact that the wine is fermented on the small vessels.
Well, you just actually educated me. Thank you for that, because I'd never heard a winemaker say that. So you're changing the texture, not just by, you know, the little bit of an oxidative process, but loosening the wine up, but changing the mouthfeel
Yes.
on the wine.
And
giving,
that is also due to the fact that you have more lees contact. So the lees are all the deposits from the fermentation that carries a lot of the yeast cells. And the yeast, when they die, I mean, they're microscopical, right? But all together add this flavor, this texture to the wine. So what we do is we put the lees on suspension during the fermentation process, and then we just let the juice and the wine settle before we will rack to do bottling of the wine. So that really soften and lengthen the texture of the wine.
We have a great question coming in for both of you, and you can nudge it into wherever you want to, but what are the biggest challenges in California? And, you know, maybe it varies dramatically from microclimate to macroclimate to macroclimate due to climate change. But before you answer that, I have to brag about you slightly, Bibiana, because, you know, I can't say she hides in plain sight because she's exuberant. But Jason Pahlmeyer, for whom she consulted, called her a genius. And she was the 2015 San Francisco Chronicle's Winemaker of the Year. So you don't mind, I feel like your sister or auntie, because I want to bring that to everyone's attention. Before I show this next picture, hold on, hopefully I have this in order. Is this Diego?
That one is Lucas.
Lucas. So it's an older picture, right?
In 2015, and it was just during harvest. So I was having Lucas coming with me everywhere. Full disclosure, we had help. So it's not like I was working 10, 16 hours a day with him on my backpack, but he was at the winery all the time. And when the journalists from the San Francisco Chronicle came to do pictures, I didn't actually know that they were doing pictures because they have chosen me as winemaker of the year. So I was tasting wine with Lucas, and they asked like, "Oh, is that okay if I take a picture of you?" And Lucas like, "Sure."
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Lucas gets full credit for, you know, your wine then being completely irresistible, because look at that face.
Yeah, it's adorable. He spends a lot of time with the two of us at the winery.
And I couldn't get a better picture of shot, but there's Lucas and Diego, right? And is this Pinot?
Yes.
I love that. Anyway, I just think that, you know, you're a terrific role model in Women's History Month. That just occurred to me to say that out loud. But you yourself in a call with me said that, you know, the gentleman to your right was very supportive, right? Every time you got scared or, you know.
Yeah, it's very true what you said. You know, a lot of people focus a lot on when you're a woman entrepreneur. I'm the sole proprietor of my business. I get questioned all the time, like, what does it mean to be a woman on the wine industry? And I just always have to acknowledge that I have been mentored my whole career by men, and Jeff is always one step ahead of me. So every time there is an opportunity that I would be like very apprehensive or scared of, it's like, what do you mean you're scared of? Like, come on, go do it. So he definitely is my biggest advocate, and I don't think I could do anything that I have done coordinate on my own without Jeff by my side. So
well, thank you for letting me ask you about that, because it's wonderful. And you get to collaborate on something as well, which is terrific, which we're going to hear not only about the Sauvignon Blanc, but another product. I'm not going to do a spoiler alert here. Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you if you don't mind. And if you hold tight to that question about climate change, especially if it comes into talking about Santa Lucia Highlands. But I got to tell you, everybody, whoever made this map deserves to be rich, because there are a lot of maps. Did your team make this map?
No, not that one. It's a a good acquaintance. He did it scratchboard, I believe it's called. They basically carve it out of wood, or it mimics this wood carving feel. Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, I mean, you see it so clearly, the bay, positioning it where Santa Cruz is. Plenty of us have, and some of you may have played golf in and around Monterey and Carmel, but you've got the Highlands here, there's the Carmel Valley, and then there is Gary's Vineyard, Soberanus, and Pizzoni. I want everyone to see another one of the words I have spelled wrong for a decade, because it's Garys apostrophe, more than one Gary, right?
Yep.
Tell us about how this came about. Was this the first one that your dad put all that energy into?
Second planting.
Second planting.
Yeah, so our Pisoni vineyard on the southern end was planted in 1982, and the Gary's vineyard was planted in 1996, named after two Garys. So come 96, my father was, wanted to plant additional locations, and he had grown up with another farmer in the area, Gary Franscioni, whose parents also farmed. So it's the story of a small farming town. My grandmother used to joke that the two Garys used to play with toy tractors, and they partnered in the vineyard, and now they just play with big tractors.
What's your grandma's name?
Jane.
Jane.
So
We've talked about her so much. I wanted to personalize it.
So in 96, they planted that vineyard. And one of the neat things about, our region, and what I like about this map, is that you pointed out Monterey Bay. And when you have the California map, Monterey Bay is really like the largest inlet for the Pacific Ocean on the entire coast. So, and what that means is as the Santa Lucia range and the Gabilan mountain range run parallel down to make that valley, the winds off Monterey Bay basically funnel in and then rush down that valley. So it really captures all of these marine influences.
Like this way, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Like that. Mm-hmm.
So we have, fog at night in the morning, and then we have these literally 20-mile-an-hour winds every afternoon all summer long.
Wow.
It's wild.
Best friend to the grapes. Do you pronounce it Salinas?
Salinas.
Salinas, sorry about that. See, at least I asked how to pronounce it correctly. This is Steinbeck land, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And Steinbeck spoke about, in his book East of Eden, and maybe he spoke about the soils in the mountains in the Santa Lucia range, not obviously inadvertently, but spoke about like the thin flinty soils, which is, really neat to see from a grower's point.
This is the mountain range. The only reason I know about the Gabilan mountain range is, I don't know how many years ago, I went to visit Calera early on in their history, where Josh Jensen had made a mission in life, not to go to Oregon, but to find Burgundian terroir in California. And he did, right?
He certainly did.
I picked up some other pictures. I hope you don't mind if I show them. This one, I think, was a picture. Did you send me this one? It was this Chip. What are we looking at here?
So that's our Pisoni vineyard. Mm-hmm. And that's one particular block there. But what it really illustrates how divided up and how we have these blocks that are really planted along the contours of the mountains, because there's no like square, easy to plant block. They all follow the hills.
This is not Napa, right? Right. This is gorgeous picture. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. It really shows you how the vines and the topography are one.
Yeah. And
what's this? I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Each block is a little different. Mm-hmm. So the next slide that you have there, right? This is the looking out towards the valley, showing how high it is. But also, this was in a new planting that my brother and another woman that works with us did. It's our insectary. And what that does is, as a really focus on sustainable farming, this allows us to have a lot of native plants that attract good insects, the beneficials. And with that, it's a really large planting, proportionally. And that helps defend the vines and help keep away other unwanted pests like mealybugs.
Is this an experimental planting or a working planting?
It's working. We kind of like conceptualized it for a while, and it's about 2 acres, and we have another one across the road from that, which is about 3 acres. So it's a really large surface area committed to this in terms of like sustainable farming.
Well, I think you used the term cold desert, and that's what came to mind when I looked at this, actually. The only thing I could think of are maybe pockets of Paso and also high Mendoza, where you see cactus, in the vineyards, but it was just a glorious shot. Oh, and who's this gentleman that you're talking about here? And everyone, if you've got the Pinot, please start playing with it, because hopefully you've poured it and it's opening up in your glass. It's heroic and muscular and can use a little air, and that's a good thing. Who's this gentleman? Yasmin Lopez?
So 2 people, yeah. So the woman that I mentioned is Yasmin Lopez.
Yeah.
She works with us. Her title is Special Projects Manager. She basically works on a lot of things, but she's a very talented master gardener. Excellent at a lot of things, but her expertise in terms of gardening applies in that insectary. She chose all the plants. And what's really interesting and a big project for that is that these beneficial attracting plants need to be flowering year round to make sure these insects are in the vineyard year round. So it's an assortment of plants that are flowering for like 2 or 3 months. As one tapers off, another one will stagger, so that there is a flower that attracts beneficial insects flowering year round.
Would you mind, would both of you, before we move on to the Pinot, mind addressing the whole issue of climate change? Because it really is an elephant in the room. And a lot of the Europeans talk about it very openly. I just listened to a webinar the other day with top Austrian producers who were saying that biodynamic viticulture was helping them deal with climate change, because it's not just about heat, it's about dryness. But have you had to make any adjustments or, look to the future? Or have you been affected by it yet?
Sure. I think we certainly have. From a temperature point of view, we don't see as much. Kind of like you mentioned, there are multiple factors at play. People talk about the warming effect, and and there are theories that we're close enough to the ocean that we don't see the temperature rising so much. But the erratic weather, the dry weather, we see a lot, and it just seems like it's very unpredictable now. Which is a big part of us focusing on sustainable farming. It's not going to change everything, but it's what we can do at least. And I think as wine growers and winemakers, you kind of feel it more, because there's as farmers in general, you have a very long time horizon that you're looking to.
And you've got it, and actually you're being responsive. I mean, as opposed to reactive, you're trying to look forward. But I would imagine that your particular little macroclimate has something going for it, especially in terms of the Pacific influence. Doesn't that those winds make a big difference.
It keeps us cool. So when we look at varieties we plant, we're a Pinot focused region, and we foresee that a long time into the future. But the other consequences of global warming are huge. And we're 3rd, 4th generation farmers, and we want that to keep going. So we're very committed to making sure we do what we can.
When you say 3rd, 4th generations, you're talking about pushing 70 years, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than 100 years.
It's more than that.
Is it?
Yeah.
120 years maybe ish. Yeah. Our family came over from northern Italy and southern Switzerland, started this dairy farming in the Salinas Valley before there was any vegetable farming. And then it shifted to row crops in the 50s. And obviously now there's a lot of wine grapes in the area too.
So tell us, why is this guy so special? And what the other Gary is Italian as well, from the pronunciation of his name, right?
Yep, exactly. So the Gary's Vineyard is a really nice, section of land in the middle of the appellation. It's very representative of the Santa Lucia Highlands, I feel, where Our Pizzoni vineyard is higher, tucked into the corner. This is, very representative. It's not as rocky. The fruit's really, but it has a nice, like, kind of like sandy, loamy soil, brings a lot of like richness, a lot of fruit. I feel like it's a laser beam of like intense, pure fruit purity, really nice soft tannins. Yeah, I love
But
the
it's
wine.
got concentration. I'm curious if I can ask a geek question for 10 seconds, because actually we had another really good question come in about how you adjust when you make changes, how and why do you make them to your winemaking year to year? But what strikes me about this wine is the color. And also, if everyone who's tasting it, if you can just hold it on your palate. I'm a big mid-palate person because I think you can play with wine and chew it and do everything. But when you hold it on your palate, there's a density of fruit to this. And also dark fruit, like if a strawberry could be black, that's what it makes me think of, a black strawberry or a black cherry. It's really cool. Do you have thicker skins on these Pinots, or?
Thicker skins, and going back to what, you mentioned about cold desert and tough soils in the mountains, which really vine's working hard. And the farming comes in, low yields. We're not cropping these heavy. And we couldn't, because if you crop too much fruit on these vines in the mountains, they're not going to ripen, they're not going to grow.
So what's a low yield? Can you give us like tons per acre? 2
to 2.5 tons per acre.
What would be a high yield?
Yeah, a typical Pinot Noir at an average yield is probably 3.5 to 4. High yielding is 5, but 5 to 6. So they're.
So this is low. Yes. And you're not trying to control it. It just does this, correct?
Yeah, we just have to do that. And people ask about the color, and because Pinot Noir, notoriously is really hard to get a lot of color out of. So often they ask what we're doing, when we're picking, and it's like, it's not about what we're doing or when we're picking. It's just vines are working really hard in the mountains, low yield.
Chip Delsner took this picture. Are these baby vines? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, exactly.
He took it on the tour.
Yeah, he must have been there in 2000. That must have been 2011. Yeah, so it's a new block, and we planted, some rootstock, or whether it was rootstock or maybe grafting over it.
I just love the landscape. It reminds me of Greece, just that, the dark conifers and the gentle ranges. Let's talk about the Pinot specifically, because I got to tell you, this baby is being a little more friendly to me after it sits in my glass for a while. It's young. It's a heroic Pinot, but interestingly, it's not Russian River. It's very different. I don't really, the alcohol doesn't pull my attention. It's the density, but anyone who's tasting it, if you want to weigh in, the acidity is very firm and almost salty. It finishes great. I don't know if you have a library, but I'd love to see this wine in 5 years, right?
Visit. Yeah, we certainly keep a library. I love tasting these after, with a few years of aging.
Can you tell us a little snapshot of what you do to make it and how you adjust from year to year? Because that was a question that had come through. Is there anything germane, is there a punchline about how you handle the fruit from this vineyard?
You have winemakers talk about gentle winemaking a lot, and it is, I feel like I guess a way to illustrate that, we're all native fermentations, and it's just
so that's wild yeast, just to remind everybody what we're talking about as opposed to cultured yeast, right?
So no inoculation. So we take our grapes, which are really clean from when Mark does the farming, harvesting. We bring them in, we sort them, grapes go to a tank, and that's basically all. And we don't add anything. We let the grapes stay there for about a week, and they start fermenting all by themselves with the own native yeast, as you mentioned. And it's a hands-off approach, but it takes a lot of attention. So we watch them extremely close. We're a lot more, scientific in that sense than most. So we're hands-off and scientific. We take samples, taste, put them under the microscope, watch to make sure they're good yeast that are fermenting. It's kind of like the helicopter parent approach. Why not that we're helicopter?
I have a feeling. So Bibiana, I think you're less of a helicopter parent with Lucas and Diego than you are with the wine, both of you, right?
definitely are not. I actually tell everybody I'm not that Colombian on education. I'm very French on the way we educate our kids. It's funny. I'm so like on the French frame, but yeah, no helicopter parenting at home.
So I'm wondering if I can ask anyone who's tasting the Pinot if they want to weigh in on it, because I think this Pinot really requires patience in the glass and then rewards it in spades. Who's got it out there? Mish, do you have it? Do you have it in your glass? Or Mike? Or
I have it. I have it. I'm by myself, so I didn't want to open it. But I can if you insist.
No, I want you to hang out and share it with someone,
right.
you know, so you can enjoy it. But I mean, I'm sitting here drinking it. It's the lowest wine in my glass, because I think that sometimes people, you know, we all have these conventional wisdom sort of preconceptions about Pinot. And I think that you can't, it's not one-stop shopping. This is a Pinot Noir that rewards air and bottle age. And if we're not going to give it bottle age, I'm telling you, it's changed significantly in my glass drinking it. But I can't wait to see the complexity that's going to pick up. What happens when it's like, you know, 5 to 10 years old, Jeff?
I think you see the tannins soften a lot. It'll mellow. That's the biggest change.
It's not hard though, you know, but does it pick up like different fragrances and flavors too?
Sure. Yeah, you get less primary fruits. You get more like, you know, what they call the tertiaries, more spice, more dried flowers. But there's still, but it retains this freshness.
But that's the, you know, the takeaway actually, if I can say this before we turn to shared notes, you know, and I don't think you're going to mind this association. Santa Lucia Highlands shares this with Santa Rita Hills, correct? Where you have this strong Pacific influence,
Yeah, it really
and
does.
you have such a strong Pacific influence, you know, with cold winds, that you are able, you know, you can hang this fruit on the vine for a while, and you can get terrific ripeness. Oh, there's a doggy. We needed one. Yay. You can get ripeness.
Madeline,
Yes.
it tastes like a good Pinotage from Stellenbosch.
Well, you're talking to a South African here, by the way. Norm, thank you for speaking up. This is a native South African who is a very valued and supportive guest of Plum Market, both on our virtual tastings and our actual ones. So that's high praise, by the way. Anyway, we were actually, and everyone, I know that this wine is a little bit more premium, but we happily get to taste it because the Lucia non-Gary's was not available to us. So thank you for fulfilling my selfish expectations. I'm gonna turn to Bibiana. I know it's 7:30, everyone, but I know you're gonna hang with us for a little while because I really want you to hear how these folks collaborate. Oh, this was actually a picture I wanted to show. What are you doing here, Jeff? Can you tell us?
Oh, so this is when the wine is finished fermenting, an example of a tank that the grapes would ferment in. And when the fermentation is over, we open this valve and let the wine drain out. And what's important about the photo is because there are two different quality cuts that we make at this time. This is what's called the free run, where it's all the finished wine flowing into that sump, we call it. And from there, we transfer it to a barrel and it's done. And it rests in that barrel for 11 months, unmoved, until we bottle it. Now, what remains inside the tank are the grapes, the whole berries. Afterwards, we take those out, shovel them, and press them, and we get our press wine. But the press wine's not as good, so that's separate. So
But you use a little bit of the press wine in the final cuvee?
we use 0.
0, ah.
So everything Lucia or Pizzoni is all free run. And that
Wow.
takes the yield from about 150 gallons down to like 110 gallons.
Now we forgive you for the price point on the single vineyard appellations. I'm teasing you. No, we're talking about a significant reduction in production.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have to read you what somebody said, by the way, before we go to shared notes. This may be the first Pinot I have had that is really completely different and much smoother with the second, third, and fourth taste. I agree with you, Catherine. Yay. So Tell us about shared notes. How did this come about? Bibiana,
Yeah.
did you think of it? Was it your brainchild?
Well, I gotta say that for many years, while Jeff and I we were dating, we were both of us very focused on our own projects. So Jeff has always been the winemaker for Pisoni, Lucy, and Lucy, and I was always the winemaker for a winery, or became my sole proprietor and a consultant winemaker. So we were really not spending that much time together during harvest, because people don't realize harvest is not as glamorous as it might look. You wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., you are out harvesting fruit with the crew, you are there your day, and you work sometimes 16 hours a day pretty easily. And it's 7 days a week. So things don't really slow down during harvest. So I used to complain that we don't spend time together. I'm sure Jeff misses spending time together, but I would complain. He would not complain.
Well, you're Colombian. You're supposed to complain.
Of course,
Yes, yes.
of course. But I would not do anything different. I would continue like do my own thing. And when I decided when we got married in 2011, so we were married on November 11, 2011. And really soon after getting married, I really made the decision to leave my job as head winemaker for a winery in Sebastopol to become a consultant and to start my own label. And we also wanted to do something together. And you say your mind child. Definitely Shared Notes is a very intellectual project for Jeff and I, where we are really sharing all the knowledge that we both have from very different inspirations and background and training into one single wine or two single wines, which is Shared Notes. And I think so Jeff has been going to Colombia with me every single time since we started dating. I think you have been there like 15 times already.
Oh, and the babies have been there too, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Mhm.
Lucas is gonna be 6, and he has gone 4 times. If it's not because of the pandemic, he would be already been going 6 times, I think. And Diego has been there 3 times, right?
So tell me, why Sauvignon Blanc? How did that happen?
You want to start?
Well, we both really love Sauvignon Blanc. We really do. And Bibiana spent time at Aubryon and La Mission Aubryon. My time at Peter Michael.
Cha-ching, I was right about that.
They were so well known for various things. And the
Mhm.
Sauvignon Blanc was like a small slice of the program that was like under the radar, but beautiful. And we drank a lot of Sauvignon Blanc. And when we talked about making something, we didn't want to make a Pinot because we'd each been making Pinot or Syrah, and they'd say like, which Syrah Pinot is better? Neither of us had been making a Sauvignon Blanc, and we really loved it. We went through the Loire Valley a couple times, and we just thought it would be a great fit.
So to your point, everyone listen to this. They make 2 ultra premium Sauvignon Blancs that are stunning. One is La Pierre qui décide. I love that. The rocks decide. And that is fashioned in the style of Upper Loire Valley. And the other is La Leçon de Maître. I get to practice my French accent, which is the lessons of the teachers, right? And that is inspired by a premium Bordeaux Blanc cuvee. So I will tell you right now, before we move on to their coffee, which is not available in the United States, but will be sometime in the near future, that I think they're both stunning examples. And the only reason we're not tasting them is my team felt strongly that we had to show these 3 specific wines because they represent your relationship. And also, frankly, at the end of the day, how could we not do Pinot Noir? How could we not do Alma de Cattleya? And how could we not do a rosé at this time of year? But you're going to take my word for it. I never lied to you. You're my first love before wine. So please try Shared Notes. And Michelle has her doggies here. She's sharing them. Excellent. Thank you for that. Now, will you tell us about the coffee? Because that is something that is relatively new, yes?
Yeah, so in regards to the wines, I just have to say that when I did the seminar with you and we used shared notes,
Yes.
it was really like the first year that we were distributing shared notes in Michigan, or the second year. And you were like completely tasting the wine blind and just so impressed with a wine that has such a French influence, that is so dry, that is so refined, is so elegant. Um, we don't make too much of notes. That's why it currently there is a little bit in Michigan, but we will definitely be sending the 2020 vintage soon. But we only make about 100 cases of each for those of you that didn't know about that. So very small production. Then a few years ago, I started in Jeff that I wanted to have a coffee farm in Colombia.
You were bored, right, with two kids and Cattleya and Alma de Cattleya, and oh my God, your energy, Bibiana. Okay, go ahead.
And then Jeff is like, well, who is going to farm it if we are not there? So he kind of slowed me down on that one a little bit. And he said, well, why don't we start bringing green beans? We roast it, because the roasting process of the coffee is one of the most important parts on the definition of the coffee that you are representing or selling. And why don't we start roasting it? We see how it goes, and we start building that project of having a farm in Colombia, which on the long term, my hope would be that our kids will be able to farm in Colombia and farm in California, bringing the amount of knowledge that we have in the US farming and in agriculture to a country like Colombia that still in agriculture is not as developed as we are here. So that's kind of my Colombian born dream is. And then Jeff just loved the idea of the coffee. And we felt that it was a family project. So many reasons to make it under shared notes. Coffee comes from a fermentation of the cherry. You have to ferment the cherry to extract the seeds. It's a byproduct of yeast, and Jeff loves yeast. And it's very focused on acidity.
And you're dealing with farmers, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So very fair trade farm, single origin coffee. We actually have it available across the U.S. so we can ship from the winery. And
So
we
note to self, before it hits Michigan, they can go to whose website? Your website, or is there there's a shared notes website?
So Michelle is working with Madeleine on getting shared notes coffee in Michigan and maybe at Plum Market. But in the meantime, you definitely can just purchase from us a very small production, single origin coffee. You want to tell a little bit about it?
Sure not. I mean, I just love the parallels. I mean, coffee is such a, a beautiful aroma. It's such an emotional aroma because so many people are so close to it. And the parallels that Bibiana mentioned in terms of farming, fermentation, production, and also sensory. I mean, the amount of diversity and aromatics and finesse that's in coffee, it's beautiful. And it's really like a kind of, a very parallel to wine in a different, product.
We will pay attention to it when it appears. I love this because you went from wine to a coffee cup.
Yeah.
We're going to hang for a little bit longer. Nobody has to run away because I don't shut these down. If you have any more questions, Jeff, as I show, I'm going to pull up one screenshot of our next tasting, but can you address that question that came through, or either of you actually, on how do you make decisions that are a pivot from year to year? Is it due to the harvest time, the ripeness levels, the acidity levels? What are the major changes either of you do to your standard winemaking practices?
Yeah, some of the largest ones are harvesting decisions, whether or not to use whole cluster, and that means destemming or not destemming before fermentation. How much oak you use, how long do you age, and they're really just a combination of everything you take in from observation, whether it's looking at the vines throughout the growing season, what the weather's like, what you're tasting, and what we measure in terms of analysis. all that together, you're making evolving decisions as the season goes. There's nothing formulaic about it. It'd be a very hard thing to write down on paper.
Do you, the two of you, like talk to each other about winemaking techniques?
But now that we are collaborate on a project, we-
Yes.
before that, it was like, no. Yeah, we do a lot. And part of it, you know, we've always shared a lot and talked about winemaking theory a lot, but when it came to our Pinot Noir projects, before shared notes, we often were like, you know, you're so busy and so caught up in your own project, you'd share a taste every now and then, or when you're finished the bottled wine, but it was hard to find time to collaborate along the way.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's you are very busy taking so many decisions, and I think the question about how do you adapt to every year and the changes on the year and all of that, it just really a multitude of decisions that you are taking per block, per vineyard, per varietal, and you are just always hoping to make a better wine.
You can't fall asleep on your winemaking. You guys are aware. You know, Mother Nature is the one who's the fat lady singing at the end of the day, correct? As the saying goes. This is what we're doing, by the way, in a couple of weeks. I hope you don't mind that I'm celebrating.
He's awesome.
Isn't he awesome?
Oh,
I have to tell you, I'm so happy to hear you say that, because look at his face. He's almost as cheerful as the two of you, you know, and we tasted actually his regular Russian River bottlings, which are incredibly modestly priced, and they were stunningly good. I think, excuse my finger for a moment, we had to pivot to a single vineyard, a Sonoma Coast Pinot, but it's still moderately priced, and his Old Vine Zinfandel, but we're going to the Russian River in a couple of weeks with a gentleman who's very well respected in the industry, right, Bibiana and Jeff?
absolutely. I mean, you guys are really up for a great treat, because he's fun. He's very, very knowledgeable. He has been there forever.
No, he's been there. He's not part of the family, but he is part of the family in terms of his hand is the wine. And you know, the only confusing thing that I have to give him hell in a couple of weeks is I get very confused between Hartford, Hartford Court, and Hartford Family. And they use all three on their label, so I'm confused. If anyone else wants to speak up before you go away, I have to thank you from my heart, Jeff and Bibiana. You have given us yourselves, not just your time, but your spirit and your heart, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
For sharing
Thank you for
yourselves
having
in
us.
Michigan.
Thank you.
Madeline, I just want to say the Sauvignon Blanc, the label was the most beautiful label I have ever seen on a wine bottle, where I didn't even want to open it because it was so
my God,
gorgeous.
Elaine, you just made Bibiana swoon. You know?
Thank you so much.
And I'm more of a red wine, but the wine was delicious. I've been to Sonoma and Napa, and I can't wait to come back and visit your vineyard.
Thank you. Please come anytime. You know, we're starting to get people to ask for visitations. So I think it's gonna be like a huge influx. So many people on the summer are gonna be like just wanting to travel, and people is being very safe in Sonoma County and Monterey County to take a lot of CDC guidance and mask and protection and outdoor tasting. So please do so. We would love to see you.
Mike or Patrick, do you want to speak up about anything? I don't know what you're sipping with Carrie there, Mike. Uh-oh, here I called on her.
Hold on, she's coming.
She's coming. Carrie, Mike will be the first to admit that Carrie is beautifully expressive when it comes to wine. Now, you don't do a bad job as well. Anything you want to say about this this experience or these wines, Carrie and Mike?
Well, it was really great listening to both of you. Actually, Bibiana, we did a tasting at Ruth's Chris a couple years ago. I was present for that. And then also I've been to Pizzoni with AHD. Michelle.
I haven't been, so I get to be jealous, right?
I have some great pictures of your niece and your nephew pouring us mags of Lucy Rosé in the vineyard. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And actually it was interesting. I was showing Mikey throughout the presentation some pictures that I had of us with Gary obviously a character. And then we had the opportunity to drink Pinot and Syrah in the vineyard, in Gary's vineyard, which was cool, with the other Gary and Mark, which was a lot of fun. Your wines are always solid. I mean, I have nothing but compliments to give when it comes to any of these. Like the Pinots are just outstanding, and it's really cool to be able to just kind of listen to both of you talk about everything.
And they're very unique, aren't they? I mean, I love the fact that I meant what I said earlier. We're talking about a region that is, new. It's moving into being classic New World terroir. How cool is that?
I mean, it's really cool, and the wines are beautifully made.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't speak enough about the quality of the wines and the value now. I mean, it's nuts. Even the expensive stuff is completely worth every dollar you spend.
Thank you, Miss Carey. Well said. She's now an official educator, by the way. Where are you working?
I am teaching a wine and spirits class at Schoolcraft.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Miss Michelle, you've been out there to visit. Anything you want to say about your impression when you were in California?
It's when he talks about the cold desert, it's really pretty stunning. On the day that I was there, I always seem to go to California when it's rainy and cold, and it was cold, and there was huge fog rolling in from the bay.
So it's real.
It was really chilly. I mean, he's not kidding. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Your brother gave us the tour. At some point, there was some critter eating grapes in the vineyard, and he let us know that the sausage that we were having later was made by critters that eat the grapes in the vineyard. So
so it was critters eating Pizzoni grapes. Excellent. Made the sausage. Okay.
There's zero tolerance for that. Wild boar, deer.
Madeline, I have a couple of questions.
Please. We're hanging, and if you don't mind, Bibiana and Jeff, just staying with us in our sort of little afterglow session here, because I really appreciate how patient everyone is. We try to get through the wines in an hour, but frankly, if we've got a resource like these two, I'm not in a hurry to make them go away. Go ahead with your questions.
Okay, so Jeff, what's the difference between the Pizzoni label and the Lucia label, other than the Pizzoni is obviously a lot harder to get? And then the second question is—
Good question.
The second question is, where can we visit you guys? We actually visited with your dad back in 2003 at his house, but do you have a winery that we can, or tasting room somewhere we can actually visit?
We do. So the two labels, our Pizzoni estate label is a single Pinot Noir from our Pizzoni vineyard. And Lucia is kind of like our exploration. It's all estate fruit, but it's other sites and other varieties.
But both are available through the Pizzoni website, correct?
Yeah, through website, and Chip AHD gets both of the wines, all the
Right.
wines.
No, he has actually excellent distribution on all of your wines because he's a massive fan, right, Michelle?
We're very lucky.
Madeline, if anyone's looking for something and they're, in an area where they're not next to a plum, they can always email me and find me on the AHD website.
You know what I'll do then on our, we always have a follow-up email. I will include your email address. That way.
Or I can alert the buyer at any of the plums that,
Right.
You want something and let them know to bring it in for you.
But you had two buyers, one from the Bloomfields and one from Ann Arbor tonight on this. And, we're very responsive. Oh, we have a baby too. I have to ask the heirs the baby's name because that is an enthusiastic, beautiful baby.
Eloise.
Thank you.
Eloise, excellent.
We actually moved back to Michigan from Monterey because of this one. So
For real?
thank you for giving us a taste of Monterey, where we lived for 5 years before this.
We miss it, so thank you.
And I've never had an SLH Pinot that I didn't like.
Oh.
Wow.
Well, and we get to meet Eloise as well. I have to tell you, when I visited the Monterey area, and frankly, that whole area, to me, I grew up in Greece 15 years, and I thought there's no place that I've seen that has the same magical interplay of the sky and the sea. You know, that visually and the feel of it is so stunning, you know, and I don't think I think it was the Greek in me pining for, for the Mediterranean, right? Any other questions for the two of them before I liberate them and they can keep?
Well, the second part of your question, Randy. Yes, so vineyards are all in Monterey County and our winery is in Sonoma County, where Bibiana was describing earlier, the city that we're in now. It's right outside Santa Rosa. Early on, when we first started making our Pizzoni family's wines, we were renting space in Sonoma County because I was working at Peter Michael and was transitioning from that. And I always loved the idea of working in Sonoma County because there's a much greater network of winemakers. You know, I love our vineyard and geography in Monterey County, but there are very few wineries there. So I kind of settled in Sonoma for that. And now we purchased a building which we outfitted for all of our own customized wine production, which is where our winery is. And you're welcome when everyone's out. You know, we don't publicize that we do visits a lot, but you're certainly welcome to give us a call and come by.
So will they visit in
Either where?
in the Central Coast or Sonoma, or they can do either?
You can do either or both. So it all depends on where you are going. If somebody's going to Pebble Beach and golfing and going to beach there, then you get Mark Pisoni and the Vineyard. But if you are coming to Napa and Sonoma, you will be tasting with Jeff and I. We do not have a tasting room or tasting staff or people. It will really be Jeff or I with a thief tasting from the barrel with you guys.
I'm in.
Anytime.
So you guys, if you're dealing with Santa Lucia fruit, you're trucking it up, correct?
Yes.
To Sonoma, which is what, you know, a couple hours in a refrigerated container.
You don't miss anything.
Oh, no, no. I miss everything, but that's why I get to ask the stupid question that nobody else wants to ask. And that's one of the best things about having been around for a long time is I don't mind asking that question, you know. I really think that all this information is accessible to all of us, and having the two of you here is such a resource because what we read, what we taste is fine and good, but it completely comes alive when you see the, you know, the flesh and the spirit and the heart behind it. So I can't thank you enough for being with us tonight.
Thanks. No, and yes, so we harvest at night. Grapes go on a refrigerated truck set to about 45 degrees. And then
That's cold.
3-hour drive to Santa Rosa, Roner Park, Santa Rosa.
45 degrees is beer temperature, you know, right?
It's very impressive. You know, I always work with Sonoma County fruit or Napa Valley. And I remember dating Jeff and Jeff waiting for the truck at 7 a.m. and the fruit being like perfectly cold, perfectly harvested, no leaf, super clean. It's very impressive. I mean, and one thing that we didn't talk much about it today is the relationship that Mark and Jeff have as brothers. It's really like one single person, which for me as a mother of 2 boys, is my only dream that they would be like Jeff and Mark. They are like one person. Speak on the phone all day long. Don't say hi. Don't say goodbye. And I remember starting to date Jeff and I'm like,
who are you talking to, right?
He's like, you already hung up and you didn't say goodbye to me? Like, that is so rude. And then he's like, oh my God, we speak like 20 times a day. So
you guys complete each other's sentences. You're probably
chaotic. We're gonna have to like retire at the exact same time. Really...
I'm curious, do you guys argue with each other? Do you ever have like, no, are you crazy? What are you talking about? Do you have moments like that?
We certainly have our disagreements, but it's easy. It's easy to work through. It's, you know, we have the same goal and we've done it for so long. It's really great.
Everyone, I'm going to liberate you to have the rest of your dinner or, you know, a digestif, as the saying goes. And I'm very happy that you now have 2 new friends and that I get to continue a friendship that I'm going to cement when I come out there and have dinner with you over something or another. But barrel samples sound great because every time I taste barrel samples, I don't know what the hell I'm tasting, but I love them all. I'm Mikey, they all taste good to me. So maybe you can educate me about barrel samples. I'll come out with Michelle. We'll go out together.
That'd be fun.
So
We
thank
can't
you
wait.
for sharing your spirit and your wines with us. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks. And I will follow up with an email with the link of this if you want to rewatch it for fun over another bottle of wine, and with Michelle's cunning email address, right? And a reminder about Jeff Stewart and Hartford in a couple of weeks. Thank you for your support. It means everything to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.